When they're feeding the dead to the living, you know the end is near. Check out this death chamber, this washing machine. They call it aquamation, where they liquefy the dead and then dump the remains down the drain to be recycled into the municipal water supply. And so people are drinking it, they're showering in it, they're doing their laundry in it, and this is happening in most states across the country. In most major cities, they're recycling dead people and feeding it to the living. What does that mean exactly? And they're grinding up the bones into powder. They call this calcium phosphate, which is going to be used for food processing, undoubtedly. Maybe in your vitamins. And so what are the implications when people start eating dead people, like cannibalism? Is there going to be kuru running around out there? Mad cow disease? What about in a spiritual sense? What is that like when you're eating and drinking dead people? Of course, they're spraying this on the food supply. Irrigation. They're using dead people as compost, and people are drinking it. So what does that mean? What does that feel like? Ladies and gentlemen, obviously this is another satanic ritual that's being performed before our very eyes. And essentially people are being raped by this death juice as they're forced to drink it. Talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. Now they're drinking dead people in the major cities. That's why they're all crazy in these big cities. They're drinking dead people, and they don't even know it, for the most part. And they keep finding human DNA in the food supply. What do you think that's all about? It's probably not just aquamation, but they're probably grinding babies and who knows what else in these meat processing plants so that people will eat human flesh without even knowing it. That's how these cult members get their kicks, ladies and gentlemen, quite literally. So aquamation has been around for about 10 years now, and it's spread to nearly every state and every major city because they're running out of space, they say, in the cemeteries. They just can't build a new one outside of town, so they're going to liquefy you. And it's like the movie The Matrix. How long before people end up in pods like this, connected to the Matrix? Probably sooner than you think, ladies and gentlemen. We're well on our way to transhumanism and assimilation. But this is some scary technology, because this can be deployed in all sorts of different ways, and people can disappear and just end up down the drain. Don't ask us what the video guy is doing on vacation. So there's all sorts of different models and all sorts of different types according to the reports. There's the hardcore hydrolysis, and then there's the soft hydrolysis. And the difference is the temperature and the time it takes to dissolve a body. It can take between 3 hours and 8 hours. So imagine you've got a laundromat like this somewhere. How many people can disappear in a day in a laundromat just like this with these types of washing machines? Undoubtedly, we'll be seeing facilities like these connected to the quarantine camps in the beginning. Of course, after a while, they just won't care anymore, and you'll start seeing the smokestacks coming from these quarantine facilities saying it's for your protection. But obviously, if we're to the point where we're liquefying the dead and feeding it to the living and calling it organic or environmental, you know these people on television have gone mental, that these people in the cities have gone mental, and it's just, without a doubt, talking to these people is useless. They don't want to hear the facts. They don't want to hear the truth. They're always going to spin it like liberals and call it for your protection. Call it your imagination. These crazies will call you crazy and say, this is perfectly fine. This is perfectly natural. This is science. Look at that. They got no problems putting the bones into a meat grinder, putting it into a bag, and saying, oh, we got some calcium phosphate. It's no longer human remains anymore. These are just chemicals. And so they're going to end up in the food supply. They're going to end up as fertilizer. And people are drinking this right now. And again, what kind of effect does this have when you drink something like this? When you drink wine, I mean, you get drunk, right? What happens when you're drinking this type of juice? You hear about the cult members drinking the adrenochrome. What about the average sheeple that's being fed this death juice? What does that do to them? Obviously, it turns them into zombies. Obviously, these people are going to be vibrating at a different frequency, at a very low frequency. But you just can't imagine dumping this into the water supply. But they do. You've heard of the expression from crap to tap. Pardon that expression, but that's what they're doing. They've been feeding people, you know what, literally, not just on the television, but literally, they're feeding people crap. And they've been doing this for years. And now they're feeding the city dwellers dead people. But it tastes, it tastes just like tap water. You ever wonder why your tap water comes out cloudy and then it dissipates, turns clear? That's all the chemicals doing their magic. It's kind of like disappearing ink in a sense. They can just add chemicals to water, to dark water, and make it look transparent. But that's besides the point. You don't even want to know what you're drinking out of the tap water. And of course, they're using all of the groundwater for fracking and other things. So people's wells are drying up. Your only choice is to drink the tap water for the most part. And most of the bottled water is just tap water out there. Most of the stuff that you find at the grocery store or the gas station, it's no better than this. It's probably even worse. And this is why we talk about it all the time. They're poisoning the water. Not just with fluoride, not just with frack juice, not just with PFAS, which is perfluorinated chemicals, forever chemicals. You're not just getting pharmaceuticals and other things in the water supply, but now you're getting an infusion of dead people. Think about that. And so what people are drinking, it's horrible. And of course, the ultimate side effect from all of this is cancer and other neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and the like. But they're never going to link it to the source. They're just going to say, oh, well, looks like you got the cancer. Here comes the chemo. Here comes the radiation, right? Because that's big business. And so when a system is this corrupt, when they're poisoning everybody through every means possible, the food, the water, the air, the education, the television, the programming, when they're spraying you with bioweapons and trying to inject you with their Franken jab, you know these people are out to get you, surrounding you with death towers. I mean, it's like a Stephen King movie out there. And it's only going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen. That's why people really have to take back control of what's going on here. Because this is not acceptable. Feeding this to children, this death juice to children, is not acceptable. Feeding it to our neighbors is not acceptable unless they're libtards, of course. Just kidding. Maybe. But it's sad. It's sad that people have been turned into walking, talking zombies. A literal echo chamber for the mainstream media. That's all they can do is repeat what's on television. It's so sad. It's such a sad world that we live in right now, especially in these cities. Nature still retains its beauty, but as soon as you start talking to people from the cities, as soon as you start talking to people that watch the television, you know there's something wrong, terribly wrong with these people. And there's no helping them. And so it's a sad situation. It's a very sad situation, but there needs to be a reset. We need to take back control of this world, ladies and gentlemen. And it looks like this pandemic is the perfect opportunity. And so, undoubtedly, things are going to change rather quickly in the next few months. But we're expecting things to get crazy during this next winter into the next spring. Now, you guys are going to want to follow the Telegram feed the best you can, because that's where a lot of the action is. Be sure to get the desktop version, because we're getting a lot of reports of interference from the Beast system. And so they're managing to shadow ban some people that still have the app from the App Store. If you got Apple, you're kind of stuck with that app unless you get the jailbreak version. But essentially, you're going to want to get the desktop version. Check out the Telegram every day. Best news stories from the internet are going to show up there. And we're going to keep pumping out broadcasts as much as we can. They're going to show up on the Rumble and the BitChute. And sometimes BitChute has, issues like playing because of the way it's set up. It's kind of like a blockchain. And so sometimes there's not a peer in the peer-to-peer network. So we also upload to Rumble usually about an hour after we upload to Telegram. So once you see a video show up on Telegram, then it'll show up on Rumble and BitChute within an hour. And so be sure to subscribe to those pages in the worst case scenario so that you can see the broadcast of the day. We're going to be doing a pretty graphic broadcast on what's happening in Afghanistan, more than likely later today. And we'll be back on Monday, or probably Sunday, with another broadcast as well for this crowd. But it's going to get real out there. The end is near when they're liquefying the dead and feeding it to the living. Till the next time, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.